Welcome to How to Split a Toaster, a divorce podcast about saving your relationships from True Story FM. We know it's wronged you, but it's time to forgive your toaster.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Seth Nelson. As always, I'm here with my good friend, Pete Wright. We're kicking off season 7 of the podcast this week, and we're talking about forgiveness. Believe me, you'll be tempted to hold the grudge, a big grudge. You'll be taunted by the thoughts of revenge. But the one thing that's going to help you get to the other side of the emotional mountain of your divorce is going to be your ability to forgive. To help us through it all, we welcome back our old friend, Elizabeth Ann Atkins, America's book coach and author of more than 40 books, wellness coach, and co-host of MI Healthy Mind, the Emmy-nominated TV talk show in Michigan, with a focus on shattering stigma around mental illness, addiction, and abuse. Elizabeth, welcome back to the Toaster.
Oh, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
What a good season 7 guest.
Wow.
To have you here.
Amazing.
Kicking it off.
7 seasons of this show. We're really excited to have you here. And I think a really great topic to kick us off and set the mood to talk about how to, the last time you were on, we were talking about holding your head high through divorce, right? And keeping your spirits up in a time that is very, very low.
Yes.
And so here it feels like a perfect chapter 2 to that conversation. And what better time? You just celebrated your 20th anniversary of
leaving
starting
my
your
marriage.
own divorce process. Yeah, leaving your marriage. So get us up to speed a little bit on your journey. First of all, for folks who haven't listened to that original episode in a while, talk about your divorce process just briefly and lead us into this, where you stand on forgiveness.
Sure. I was with him for 10 years, and it was a fairy tale that began, in that purple haze of romance, and then it ends in the stark horrors of a courtroom. And I just was so disappointed and hurt. And I had a 4.5-year-old child, and I left him, and it was horrible. For 16 years, he was verbally abusive. I had 4 restraining orders against him. And then when our son was in college, my ex-husband had a stroke and ended up in the ICU, unconscious in a coma. And our son was at college, and I promised him I'd make sure Dad was okay because I wanted my son to have a dad. So I literally stood at his bedside and said, I forgive you. And he couldn't hear me. He was in a freaking coma. But guess what? Forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about you. And I literally felt this weight lift off my shoulders. And from there on, I was just there advocating for his wellness. And he came out of the coma miraculously on Good Friday. And then now he thinks I'm an angel. And that was 5 years ago. And we have a great relationship. And I never would have imagined, because he really put me through hell.
Well, and you carried that whole sort of spirit of grudge for many, many years after your divorce.
I did, but I always had a turn the other cheek attitude toward the verbal vileness, and it was all for the sake of keeping the peace for our son, because we still had to be co-parents. And that's what mattered. People were telling me, you need to cuss him out, you need to blah, blah, blah. And the times that I did, it only devolved into a terrible place.
Those must have been the same friends when you're sitting there and he's in a coma that are like, just trip over the cord. Right? Is that what they were saying?
Not advice from counsel.
No, it was total accident, Pete.
Well, his friends, who many of whom were doctors, came in to visit, and they're like, my ex-wife would have just let me die.
Oh my God. Well, you know why I'm so interested in this, and I am sure forgiveness is not in Black's Law Dictionary. But correct me if I'm wrong, Seth. How important is forgiveness to the legal process of divorce?
I think that it's the single thing that is probably not talked about at all. Not not talked about enough. We don't talk about forgiveness.
Yeah.
And the reason we don't talk about forgiveness, it's a little hard to forgive when you're still dealing with incoming fire.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I get why Elizabeth, quote unquote, held a grudge for 20 years. Well, within that 20 years, she had to get 4 restraining orders. It's a little hard to forgive when someone's stalking you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's a little hard to forgive when at the time that I'm talking to them, because as we've talked about before, Pete, whether we like it or not, our legal system to solve disputes is an adversarial system. The worst place to put parents that need to co-parent is in an adversarial position. But when they're in that position and they're still throwing bombs and you still feel like they're trying to take your child and you still feel like they're trying to take your money and that they don't care what happens to you and they're doing character assassination in and outside of the courtroom, it's hard to forgive in the moment. Once you get separated and divorced and you have time to work on yourself, then I think it's easier, difficult still, but easier than at the actual time of the divorce.
Yeah, I can sense that. And I feel like coming out of this, like even carrying the grudge, Elizabeth, it feels like the weight of such a monumental transition for your former spouse sitting in that hospital, unconscious, post-stroke, is an act of awakening. Is that fair that it was a triggering event to awaken this sort of need to forgive? Is that a fair way to put it?
Yes, because forgiveness on my part was for me, but then he had to evolve and come to realize what had happened in the past. So his health crisis that could have very well taken his life inspired him to reflect on the past, and he apologized to me and our son.
That's what I'm kind of getting at, like the idea of to figure out how, if you're listening to this, what you're looking for to find an anchor to sort of ground you in finding an ability to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
Because to Seth's point, like when you are dealing with incoming fire, like how could you possibly even have your eyes open to opportunity to forgive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like is forgiveness post-divorce possible if only one person does it?
Yes.
If a tree falls in the forest kind of a thing?
No, because it's all about you. It's like, I think Nelson Mandela said holding on to anger is like holding on to a hot rock. You're the only one who gets burned.
Mm-hmm.
So the anchor, the inspiration, the motivation, why should you even bother to invest energy into that forgiveness? It's your future. Because if you carry all that anger, rage, I had a kickboxing dummy in my living room that I called MF, the whole word, that was his name, and I wailed on it daily to get my anger out. I was so mad. And so if you carry that into your future, forget about having a healthy relationship with anyone in terms of romance and trying to...
Forget about a relationship. Forget about the relationship you're having with yourself. You're just miserable the whole time. You got a kickboxing guy that you're kicking the shit out of every day.
Right.
I got to tell you, I got better things to do with my time.
Yeah, that's like the most awesome and sad thing I've ever heard.
It was great, but guess what? I got rid of that guy. I don't have a kickboxing dummy. I'm so peaceful and so happy and joyous, and I don't look like what I've been through. And that's my mission and my message to share with men and women, especially if they're going through or thinking about or have been through a divorce. You do not have to look like what you've been through, and you don't have to carry the anger with you. You can make peace, harmony, and have forgiveness.
And here's the thing, my view on forgiveness. It's really hard. Let me start with that, because you have to reach deep inside to your core and say all these things and all my perceptions and everything that happened to me that is not my fault, to look across the table, so to speak, and to tell someone, I forgive you. And you might get hit with, well, I didn't do shit wrong. I don't know what you're forgiving me about.
Ooh.
Right? Like it's this whole other thing that it makes no difference in the moment what that other person says. The person that you're forgiving is actually, in my view, the side player, the supporting actor at best, because it's about you and whether deep in your heart you can say, I'm letting this go. And I'm letting this go to the point where I'm saying, I forgive you. I'm never going to carry these heavy rocks on my back again. And I'm putting them down and I'm going to move on with my life. That is really powerful.
Seth, though, like speaking not to you as attorney, but to you as divorcee, your divorce was not terribly contentious, right? I mean, you didn't
in and out in 3 months.
Okay, so
the whole divorce done in 3 months. It was emotional. It was difficult. But
what did you have to? What did you talk about your experience of finding forgiveness in what is a emotionally small divorce? Like, I imagine you still had baggage, right?
Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely. I actually think the true forgiveness didn't come for years later from both sides. I'm just trying to, if I can even picture the moment that it happened, and I don't know that I can picture the moment that it happened. I do know that at one point, I called up my former spouse and asked for her daughter's social security number. It was my former stepdaughter. And she's like, yeah, you can have it, but why? And I said, well, I'm getting some life insurance and I want to leave her a little bit. And she goes, you don't need to do that, but it's very generous. You really should save your money on your premium. I'm like, look, don't worry about it. It's not that much more in the premium for what we're getting for our son. And I said, but please don't ask me how much I'm getting, because I'll tell you the value of the life insurance. And she goes, okay, I won't, but why? I said, because you'll want to whack me. Right. and this is the moment I knew she had forgiven me, because she says to me, the time for that has passed.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Which I thought was hilarious.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And
you didn't even have to to have a stroke yourself to get there.
Exactly. So we certainly got to where we forgave each other. And as you know, Pete, we have a very close relationship. Just last night, there was a function at my son's school. We sat next to each other. Her husband was there, who's an amazing role model and loves my son to death. So it's all great now. But I was just thinking, when Elizabeth said she's been divorced or, separated, walked away from that marriage for 20 years, I did the math. It's been 16 years for me.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's a long time.
So, or roughly that number. I don't know the exact date, but my son was 2.5 and he's 18 now. Do the math, right?
Yeah, right.
So that's just a long time to be carrying around some baggage.
Yeah. Well,
right?
and
that's like the baggage that your grandparents had with the little wheels that didn't work and you're dragging it along still,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really important, because I want to underscore the value of forgiveness, not as a measure of the size of the struggle in your divorce, because to Elizabeth's point, right, if it's not about forgiving the other person, if it's about allowing yourself to wake up to forgiveness, then it doesn't matter how big the baggage is. It doesn't matter. It's all right. I mean, I'm thinking, if I'm listening to this, I need to be reminded. I'm saying this out loud because I, Pete, need to be reminded of the power of letting go.
So it's really important that we share with the listeners today some action steps on actually how to forgive, if I may.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was thinking you just drink a bunch of tequila and you're good.
Yeah. You have to start
swallow.
Once you swallow the worm, you're okay. Isn't that how I think that's what it's like.
That would be fun and a temporary fix, but you wake up hungover and the problem is still there. So,
yeah.
So for me, journaling was probably number one. Sit down, get quiet and still, and block out all the noise, turn off all your devices, and just start writing. I forgive myself for that, this, and just keep writing. Let it pour out. It's just like when you ate something that upset your stomach and you throw up, you feel better because it's out of your system. So when you write, you're purging those emotions out. You can be as vile as you want to be because it doesn't hurt anybody. It's just on the page of your laptop or your journal that you're writing in. And so write. And with that, just remain quiet and still and contemplative and really think about these questions. Who am I? What do I want? What's blocking me from that? And what action steps do I need to take? I had a very...
So Elizabeth, on all that, that's all internal looking. You're forgiving yourself.
Yes.
It's not about the other person at this point.
We can't control the other person.
That's my favorite thing. My first therapist told me a thing that stuck with me for 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
Your power ends with your skin.
Ooh.
Isn't that awesome? Right?
Yes.
Like, I love that. I think your power ends with your skin.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, like, what are you going to go to? Beat someone into forgiving you? Are you going to hold them down until they forgive you? Of course not. Right. What you can do is inside.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
So,
go on.
Seth, the more you do that, the more resistant you become to whatever shenanigans they engage in. So as I did this process for myself, and he would glare at me in a really mean manner or say something horrible to me, I literally had a Teflon shield around me. Like when the rain beads up on your windshield because you just got your car washed, it would roll off and I would drive away feeling nothing, zero. Because I, on the inside, had erected this shield around myself because I was doing the work.
Yeah, I call that, why do you care? I had this conversation with a client yesterday. They're so upset about what other people are going to think, whether, what his family is going to think that, he won this because we settled. It's a great settlement for my client, and she actually understood it was a great settlement for a lot of reasons. But what he tells other people, I'm like, why do you care? Well, you really, and we've talked about this before on the show, you have no right to know what other people think about you. And why do you care?
Wow.
Right?
That's powerful.
Wow, really say that again. Talk about that. You have no right.
You have no right to know what other people think about you.
Wow.
But Seth, what if I really, really want to know?
Fool's errand. You might really, really want to know, but why does it matter?
Oh.
Is it going to change you on what these people think about you?
And I guess corollary question, if it did change you, is that really the person you want to be? Who just changes because of what other people think of you? Oh, that's heavy.
Yeah. And it served me well.
Yeah.
I mean, because what it does is it frees you. And I think this has happened to me in the arc of where I am in my life and my career. But it frees you from the stressors of trying to make people happy. What do they think? Am I doing a good job? Am I not? Now, look, I get it. If you are a young professional in a career or a brand new lawyer out of law school, you're going to care what people think about you, right? We always said it's your reputation, it's your reputation, it's your reputation. Your reputation and your character, you hope match. You can only control your character. You can't control your reputation. Right? And a lot of what that happens is, I think, to Elizabeth's point, is how people receive what you're saying. Elizabeth's saying you forgive yourself. You can't control what the other person receives or how they do it. And Elizabeth might have said to him 10 years into this, I forgive you, and he could have shot stuff back. And if she had done that hard work and, all that water coming back at her hits that windscreen and it just goes right off.
Right.
That's great. Because it's not about what they're saying or what they think about you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I believe in the power of energy. And I also believe that my healing energy by osmosis transferred over to him somehow, because it's unbelievable, the harmony that we enjoy now. We can go out to dinner with our son and have a ball and everything is good. It's like, that seems like a whole different era. He's such a nice guy and super sweet toward me. It's mind-blowing. It's not romantic. It's just harmony.
Kind.
It's awesome. We're friends.
Yeah. That's weird, right? That's weird. But that's like what, like I'm not divorced, but I look at you and I look at Seth, and I've heard for years the way he and his former spouse relate to one another. And that is the metamorphosis of relationships over time, right? Mm-hmm. Like we should expect nothing less than every other relationship in our lives that they change. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we move on from them. Sometimes we evolve into them. That's beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. That is a beautiful thing. But it feels to me like it cannot come until you break down this particular wall and forgive.
Mm-hmm. No, everything is on the other side of that wall. Your best life is on the other side of that wall. Your peace, your wellness, your new relationships, friendships. I mean, you could hang out with a whole bunch of Debbie Downers who are all mad about their divorce. That wouldn't be fun. Mm-hmm. You want to attract people who are uplifting like you're trying.
I like hanging out with those people, Pete. That's a lot of business for me.
It's a lot of business. I was going to say, that's called marketing.
Yeah. I don't know what Elizabeth... Don't listen to her on the show.
Good one.
So, Pete, you're not going to believe this. According to the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, about 10% of children live with a parent with an alcohol use disorder. That's 10%, Pete. As a family law professional, this is an alarming statistic.
I think as a human being, this is an alarming statistic, Seth. We want to make sure that all children are safe, especially children are safe with a sober parent, but we also want to help the child maintain a relationship with both parents. And balancing this is one of the hardest things to navigate in custody litigation.
Yeah, and I have clients arguing about parenting plans and time sharing and custody and visitation all day long. And you add in the hearsay, the allegation, the weaponization of the situation, and it becomes even more challenging. That's why Soberlink, Pete, has become one of the most important tools for my clients.
Soberlink is really, really cool. It's remote alcohol monitoring. It is a breathalyzer device, but it's more than a breathalyzer. And it has helped over 500,000 people improve their sobriety and provide peace of mind during parenting time. You know what it is, Seth, this breathalyzer thing. You don't just blow into it. It has facial recognition. It knows who you are when you are blowing into it. It has, there is a Wi-Fi model that connects to your phone. There's even a cellular model that doesn't need a phone. It's just instant upload to document your sobriety when you need it to be documented. When you're picking up kids for drop-off, for trade-offs, for school pickups, it is there when you need to prove your sobriety.
And Pete, courts love it because it's the system that will focus on what's the best interest of the child, which obviously is making sure the child's safe with the parent. And it's independent third-party verification. So your spouse or ex-spouse can't say he was drinking. Well, they can say it, but it's not going to hold up in court when you say, Judge, here's the printout. I blew it this time, totally sober, and it had my facial recognition. You can see it. And what I put, and everyone agrees with this, I've never had anyone argue about this little tidbit I put in these orders, if you're agreeing to do it by a stipulation that turns into a court order, is the facial recognition can only be used in court. Your former spouse can't take that beautiful picture of you and go weaponize it somewhere else and put it on social media.
Yeah.
Right? So there's ways to protect your privacy when you do this too.
And that is one of the central tenets of Soberlink. It proves you are sober when you need to prove you are sober, and it is tamper-proof technology and identity solid. To sign up, you can receive $50 off your device. Just visit Soberlink.com/toaster. That's Soberlink.com/toaster. And thanks, Soberlink, for sponsoring this show.
All right. Now, look, you go through this, though, Elizabeth. You forgive yourself. Yes. Is there a next step?
Yeah, the disillusionment with the whole dream, the fairy tale. That's why I wrote my book, Husbands Incorporated, about a fantasy marriage company that you just get a husband for 1 year, you pay him a prenup, money after a prenup after 1 year, and you get to move on to the next guy and have another husband who you're totally in control of because he's being paid. But guess what? That's fiction.
Brilliant.
And in real life,
Yeah.
I do, in fact, want a partner, something sacred. But how do you move forward with all that past history and that baggage? Very difficult, but forgiveness first, self-work, and unblocking all the things inside of us that might attract us to the wrong person again. And then really...
So I'm gonna back up
Okay.
a step, because it makes my chest just get tight when someone says you've got to journal,
Oh,
because that doesn't work for
Okay.
everybody. Just like you have different types of listeners or learners. I mean, some people learn by doing, some people learn by listening, some people learn by taking notes, right? There's all these different ways we know we learn. So I appreciate that worked for you. That wouldn't work for me, because I would never sit down to do it, right? So what I did is I went to therapy. I did a lot of just self-work on forgiving myself and saying, this is what I did wrong. This is how I want to change. So it was really the same thing. I got it all out of me. It like when you described, hey, you're sick, you're throwing up, you're getting it out. You know, my stomach bug might have lasted a lot longer, and it wasn't all in one sitting where I just pounded it out like you're saying when you started your journaling. And I'm not saying it was one night that you got it done, but I think the concept that I went through is exactly what you described. Just I did it in a different way. So, you know, I would talk to my friends and they would say, oh, how you doing? I'm like, I'm doing a lot better because I realized all these mistakes I made. And here's how I'm trying to improve. And, you know, now you actually get a closer relationship with that person because you're being open, honest, and vulnerable about how you kind of fuck things up. And to me, talking it out was the way that helped me get through that, as opposed to sitting down in a room by myself and journaling. Like Pete has like a vision of me in a basement in Florida, which there aren't, eating Cheetos.
with a swinging single light overhead.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Because did any of your friends, when you copped to that, did any of them say, "Dude, Seth, buy a journal"?
You know, there
was
was one Hanukkah where I got 8 journals for 8
my
days.
gosh.
I didn't understand what they were saying to me at the time. My dad was he was in television for a lot of years, and he didn't journal at all. But what he did do, and when he died, we found boxes and boxes of tapes. He had micro cassette tapes, and he would go on these long walks and record his own voice, just getting these things out that he was processing. And it's exactly the same thing. So I'm absolutely with you, Seth. Journaling can take many forms, and we use the word as sort of a major category label for figuring out how your brain processes. And I love journaling. Elizabeth's a journaler. Seth might not be a journaler. He's not as cool, but he's still present. So
Yeah, I
Seth,
understand.
that's such a great point, because not everybody journals, but I also had therapy, which was extremely helpful to identify my wounds so that I could heal them, so that next time I attract somebody who's also healed on those levels. But very importantly, whatever it is, your therapy, your journaling, the equivalent of where you find peace and clarity, that could be hiking in the mountains, that could be swimming, that could be cooking, whatever is your peace. And
Oh my God, I'm so glad you said cooking. And I'm serious. And I'm stopping you on this point for a reason. Because it's a daily activity. It doesn't have to be this glorious setting that you see in the movies where you come to some epiphany, right? It's the daily little things that you do that you can find that most inner peace. And look for those. You actually are probably doing them anyway, but you might not be doing them with any real conscious thought. But I think that forgiveness comes from the conscious thought process.
Love that. Powerful.
More steps. Was there another step? So I love the idea of the dissolution of dreams, like being able to come to terms with the fact that, your expectation meets reality, and there might be conflict at that intersection, or there might be peace. Right? You could be frustrated that your dreams will never come true, or you could just be in awe of the synchronicity that can, or serendipity that can occur when you get there.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So the next step is use your imagination, because my whole time journaling about the divorce, I never said divorce. I called it the harmonious resolution. And it was anything but that for 16 years. But guess what? In that right now, it's a harmonious resolution. And that was the word I used for it. You can call it the law of attraction, faith, belief, whatever. It's what manifests. So regarding yourself, what do you want next? Who do you want to be? Where do you want to go? What do you want to have? And how do you be him or her or they, them? So just believe. So I had this vision in my head of who I want to be. And guess what? I'm her today. It feels awesome. I am her. It took a long time, but I literally, the way I dress, the way I live, the way I relate to other people, the way I think, I have become that person that I envisioned 20 years ago who is courageous and confident and living the way I want to live my life. So it's really exciting.
On that point, I hear this a lot. I'm never getting married again.
Oh.
You know, I'm never getting married again. And really what I hear them saying is, I don't want to go through this bullshit of a divorce again.
Yeah.
I don't want to go through this dumpster fire again. And the way you get away from the dumpster fire, you just don't get into the dumpster, right? You don't get married again. I was wondering what you're going to say with that one, Pete. I did that just for you.
Get in a dumpster.
So
God,
I
the
perfectly
visual
was
is
saying
too
that.
much.
I know. So, but my point on that is what I tell them when they say that is I appreciate that you're taking a simplistic view. I'm never getting a divorce again. And the way I'm going to prevent that is not get married. What I tell them is take the harder view. I'm never getting a divorce again because the next long-term relationship I have is going to, there's only one way out. This is what my fiance tells me. There's only one way out, and that's death. Now, you can take that as a threat, or you can just take it on, hey, we're happily ever after till the day we die, right?
Yeah, right.
But do the work because every single one of those people end up dating someone, and then they want to be in an exclusive relationship, and then they get all freaked out on whether they get married or not. And I was like, seriously? You've been dating this person for however many years, and you don't think breaking up with them is going to be difficult? I get if their name's not on your house, it might be easier, but let's do the hard work where that relationship lasts the way you would expect it to. And how do you make that happen from your end? You do what Elizabeth did, and you become the person you want to become. Because you're never going to make it without that.
Yes. I love what you just said. That's awesome.
I think Elizabeth has been having tequila because she's agreeing with me way too much in the show today.
I haven't had to ring my bell
I have
once.
had nothing
so
but
that's
yoga today in terms of getting high.
It's so funny you say that, Seth. I wonder, like, I know you probably aren't tracking this, but I wonder if you started a little just sheet of hash marks, how many people say of your clients, how many people say over the course of a year, I'm never getting married again, like a week after their divorce? I imagine that's close to 100%. And then...
Oh, yeah. No, I don't need hash marks. It's all of them.
It's all of them. I've got a buddy who finished his divorce, and he went through that same cycle too, except for his was a little bit more complicated. He was like, oh, I'm never getting divorced again. I hate it. And I'm never getting married again. Absolutely hated that. And then he was like, okay, maybe I just need to have a lot of sex. And then he started exploring that. He was like, I kind of want a relationship. And now apparently part of the stages of recovery is I think I'm going to be in a throuple or an open relationship now. And then he realized after 6 months, that's not any fun either emotionally. And now he's back around to, I kind of can't wait to get married again. And that feels like a really interesting circle of evolution, of realizing, of rediscovering self in the process of exploration after divorce. And I know that was that was part of what we wanted to touch on today with you, Elizabeth, is how you transition from forgiveness into ongoing self-care leading to hot dates.
And Pete, we have to answer that question. I want to do that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but polygamy is a crime. Okay, because you just talked about a guy doing all sorts of stuff and then wanting to get married. So I don't want him to marry more than one person at a time.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think he wants to do that.
Okay,
I don't think he wants to marry more than one person. I think he's just done with the throuple culture, which I don't think was what it was stepped up to be.
Funny.
All right, Elizabeth,
your mileage may vary. No judgment. Please throuple it up if you want.
So I think that evolution,
no
Pete, that trajectory you just shared, it's really common. I personally, after all that I've been through, I still believe in finding my sacred person who views a relationship as a gift, a blessed gift that I believe it is. I want my Notebook person, the movie, The Notebook by Nicholas Sparks. I want that person who is going to lay down next to me when I close my eyes for the final time. Like, that's not selfish. It's like they love me that much, or I love them that much.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because how much of him, your ex-husband, being absolutely vulnerable played into you being able to forgive him? Because he couldn't hurt you at that time. He couldn't have the snide comment back. He was in a coma. So this is a guy at his absolute vulnerability where he will not live without other people taking care of him. We get like sound effects today.
I know.
That's deep.
Because you just talked about you want your relationship, your next relationship, where if you're taking your last breath, for this person when you're totally vulnerable to be laying next to you. And I just envision that's what he might have been doing, and that's when you forgave him. I think being open, honest, and vulnerable is so powerful.
For sure.
Because that's when I think people will open up. And I think with Elizabeth's, life story on this, he might have had the most power when he was totally vulnerable and he didn't even know it, because that opened the door for Elizabeth to say, I promised our kid that you're going to be okay, and I'm going to do what I can do to make that happen. And here I am. And I forgive you for all that crazy shit you put me through. But I'm going to keep that word to my son. And part of keeping my word to that son is what I need to do for myself. Now, I'm not trying to put words into Elizabeth's mouth. I mean, she's written 40 books. She's much better at this than I.
Yeah, she's got them all.
It takes work to forgive. It takes work to continue to navigate with all the moving parts, and co-parenting is very challenging. And there's triggers, there's words, there's expressions, there's sounds, there's places that can trigger all the trauma that's just one little comment away, and it just comes roaring back. And we have to have sort of internal controls in order to check ourselves. That's why one of you said self-care a little while ago. Self-care is imperative. A routine. For me, it was the gym. I just went to the gym. I learned how to strength train. I hit the kickboxing dummy, burned off my anger, swimming. It was the best. And it kept me looking and feeling really good too. Self-care is also meditation, which is as simple as sitting silently and still and reflecting, turning off all the noise, breathing deeply. Self-care is what you put in your body. Don't eat garbage or you'll feel worse, because your nutrition affects your mental health, period. So put happy, healthy fuel in your body and you will feel happier and healthier.
You raised a really good point about going to the gym and eating healthy. And I will tell you where I saw this, and it was on Facebook, and it made all the sense to me. It was a picture of a woman working out at the gym who said, for all those people that say that I'm vain and I need to look good and I eat healthy to look good, what you don't realize is I do all that stuff to take care of myself, and you don't see the trauma I've been through before. And instead of turning to drugs and alcohol and partying late at night, I want to get those endorphins going, and I eat healthy and I get my exercise and I get my sleep, because that's what makes me feel good. And if the result is that I look good in whatever people believe that looking good to be, fine. But that's not why I'm at the gym. And I thought that was really powerful, where you're taking like, I'm doing this for me, and here are all these people telling me what they think about me, which I don't really care and I have no right to know. Like, back the fuck off. Like, you don't know my story, and you don't know why I'm here. And I think that eating healthy and the nutrition and getting the exercise, it's easy to say. And I get up early to work out, and I'll get up at 5, and I will, like any true human being, will be like, I do not want to do this today. I've never once regretted a workout. Never later in the day have I thought, oh, I wish I didn't work out that morning. Now, it might not have been the best workout, but I never regret working out.
Love that. Wow.
Okay. I'll go to the gym. You guys, stop it. It's
just
fine.
Put down the Cheetos, man.
Oh my gosh.
Crying out loud. I hear you. Finally. I think this is just, I hope if you're listening to this that you are hearing that there is opportunity for these anchors, these messages, these triggers for you to turn around and see something in your life that allows you to forgive. And forgiving is an inward operation. That is such a valuable resetting of expectations. The last sort of, I don't know if it's a perspective, but I feel like you're able to forgive when you're ready to be forgiven. Does that have any resonance to you? Like, do you feel like as contentious as your relationship was there anything that you needed to be forgiven for?
Probably from his perspective, but I definitely think that he has forgiven me. I mean, I left with our child.
Well, yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah, right. Like that would be what we call a trigger.
Yeah, you know that Gap Band song?
New awareness.
That's the Gap Band. She burned rubber on me, and he came home and all he saw was hangers and poles in the closet. He probably
Bold. Awesome.
So
take action, Elizabeth Atkins.
So he has forgiven me. So it's beautiful. Yeah. I share this to inspire other people to know that yes, it is possible. It seemed impossible, but it's possible.
And if you're out there listening and you're thinking, yeah, but he wasn't as bad as what I'm going through, I assure you, people have forgiven that are in your situation as well.
Yeah, for sure.
You're not alone out there.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us, for your time. We talked a little bit about you up front, but tell us what you're up to right now. What's the most exciting stuff you're doing?
Thank you so much. I have another book coming out called The Bis Tribe, Activating Your Goddess Power. And that's coming out in 2023 from two sisters writing and publishing our company. And I have a podcast that's all about turning your pain into power. It's called The Goddess Power Show with Elizabeth Ann Atkins. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and elsewhere. And you can check it out at thegoddesspowershow.com. So it's really about all the things we're discussing about how to turn your pain into power and really become the woman or man that you really, really want to be.
Awesome. Links in the show notes to all of those things. So swipe
Can't
up,
wait to listen to the
links.
Yeah. Can't wait to listen to that podcast. That's
Thank
gonna be
you
great.
so much. This has been an absolute honor and thrill. I appreciate you all so much.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. We sure appreciate you. Thank you for downloading, everybody. We appreciate your time and attention the most of all. And you can find out all the links and show notes should be in your podcast app, wherever you're listening to this, or you can check it out on the website. Just visit howtosplitatoaster.com. You can find the site. You can find all our past episodes, and you can submit your questions. If you have any divorce questions, submit them. They will come to us. We will process them, and we will throw them at Seth, and he will answer them in the order that they appear.
Rightly or wrongly? They will
rightly or wrongly. Oh, thank you, everybody. On behalf of Elizabeth Ann Atkins and Seth Nelson, America's favorite divorce attorney, I'm Pete Wright. And we'll catch you back here next week on How to Split a Toaster, divorce podcast about saving your relationships.
Seth Nelson is an attorney with NLG Divorce and Family Law with offices in Tampa, Florida. While we may be discussing family law topics, How to Split a Toaster is not intended to, nor is it providing legal advice. Every situation is different. If you have specific questions regarding your situation, please seek your own legal counsel with an attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction. Pete Wright is not an attorney or employee of NLG Divorce and Family Law. Seth Nelson is licensed to practice law in Florida.